So here I am walking with this Rasta man towards this place. And we go down the road from Atlantic Road, we just go down Coal Harbour Lane. And Coal Harbour Lane, it hits Sommerleyton Road to the right. You know, sometimes I feel like crying when I think about those days because it was a different England. That was our Brixton, you know, and you could feel it was our place. You just passed the market that time and go Coal Harbour Lane, Sommerleyton Road to this side of the Brixton Market. And Brixton Market blew my mind. Yeah, so much food, and you had this one Chinaman right on the corner, right under the bridge, who used to sell the freshest fruits that come from Jamaica. I could cry right now. I could cry because all that is gone. You had sugar cane, you had pumpkin, you had everything. Ackee, you had everything. Plantain, everything flying fresh from Jamaica. And I'd see the right, and that was right next to where Alton Ellis had his record shop. You know, I think it was called Isotone Records. I think, if I'm not wrong. But anyway, or was it Alton Records? I can't remember. His son used to run the place. I'd see this big Rasta man going and doing the shopping and everything, and this Jamaican man speaking with Jamaican patois, and I was like mesmerized. I was mesmerized, man. You know, and I was like, wow, this is gonna be my life. So just as we were going to Sommerleyton Road, he says, no, he just bought us some coconut. I say, yeah, man. So he's speaking with this accent, and the accent was not really Jamaican, but I was like, well, you know. So yeah, before we go, I get some coconut, you know, and coconut. And I was like, okay. So this brother was from not Barbados, I'm from Guyana, South America, and he told me that on the way. But he was quiet. He was a Rasta man. He was dark. He was slim. Very into himself, kind, really kind, you know. And so he took me Sommerleyton Road, Reed Clarewood Walk, up, then up the stairs, and he knocked the door, and his brother opened the door, and we walked into this place, and he says, Lyndon, this is Jimmy. He's from Denmark, and you know, he's on a musical mission and he needs a place to stay. He can stay here. And Lyndon was like, yeah, man, it's all right. So he asked the brother, turns, you get the coconut? And say, yeah, man, I have the coconut. And the brother, the coconut. And you get the grater. And says, the grater. So he says, that's a great coconut. And he says, yeah, he told me. Broke up a piece of coconut and gave it to me. And said I must grate the coconut, you know. So and put me to work straight away. So I grate the coconut, grate the coconut. And this time they have this stove cooking with just one pot we had. And I see him cut up vegetables. I see him cut up some what you call it, okra, and different things, onion and whatever, and cut it all up. Then with the coconut milk and bring it to a boil, and then after that he put in the rice, and then the whole thing just kind of like, you know, the rice, and it's got all this like a pilau, you know. And coming from Africa, the Indian people used to cook that. It was called pilau, you know. So so he gave me, we took some food, and I started eating. I was well hungry. And the first thing I noticed was that it didn't have any salt. So I started looking for the salt. And then I remembered that no, Rastas don't need salt, you know. And so I got used to it. I said, no, man, and put a lot of spices and everything. And I started getting used to loving the food for the spices. And then they didn't have much in there. Terrence, God bless him, he had a flute made out of bamboo. We were not even eating out of plate, we were eating out of coconut, calabash kind of thing. He was roots, he was dreadlocks. He always had this dreamy look about him, like he was in a zen, you know. His brother was a little more troubled. You know, Lyndon was shuffling his feet a little, and you know, and I noticed that he was talking a lot to himself. But he was Irish still, but something was not really totally right with him, you know. But he became my friend, and I couldn't really talk to Terrence because Terrence, when you talk to Terrence, Terrence would kind of like listen like with 45 ears, not just 2 ears, but 45 ears. He's listening to you, listen to what you're saying, and he's reading you until you wonder what you're saying. Is it making sense? You say, wow, when you see him, like maybe you shouldn't even think, you know. Maybe this brother can read your thoughts, you know. But he used to like to read the Bible, and then he had this flute, and he'd play the flute. And there was no furniture in the apartment, no furniture. We just used to have our beds that we used to roll out. I had my sleeping bag, he used to roll that out, lay down on the ground, and that was the one meal. You know, you have that meal at lunchtime, the pot, you'd eat half the pot at lunchtime, and the rest of the pot would be there for evening time. And then Terrence would have a little bit of a spliff, a fiver, what you get for £5. And they started to show me how to roll a spliff, and I, you know, smoke herb. And I went to look for a job, and I found a cleaning job, and I was told where to stand to wait for the driver who was going to take me to where we're going to clean. And that was right by Windrush. You got Windrush Square, and then the road that goes up from there, just near St. Matthew's Church. Opposite there was a car salesman, you know, used car salesman used to be there way back in those days. And I was supposed to wait there, and then this brother from Jamaica called Sid, he came and picked me up. Sid was a churchman. Sid was a churchman, community man. And he picked me up early in the morning, and then would pick up other people as well. There was a woman from Ghana and a woman from Nigeria, and there was 2 girls from England, and there was another woman from Jamaica, and then there was this lady, very beautiful lady, who was also from England, you know, but she had kind of like light skin. And that was us. We get into the back of Sid's car, and we drove right down to Croydon to Merton and places like that, and we go clean schools. The owner of the company was a guy called Tony, and his wife and him and his dad were the owners of the companies, and they had us black people cleaning, and they were making. Tony was white, you know, and Sid was the driver. So we'd clean colleges, we'd clean schools, nurseries, you know, and then the driver swiped back. And I got into the routine, and it was a good routine, you know. I started making a little money, and I put the guitar aside, you know. So because my guitar playing was pathetic, so I started learning to play the guitar, but we had money and buy food and make sure that I eat good. And so I'd be got some oats, fruits and stuff like that from the market and that kind of thing, whatever. So there I was a little Mr. Independent now in London, living with Terrence. But then after a while, Terrence left, because there's this Rasta man called Benji. Benji was looking out for Terrence, and Benji just felt that Terrence should not be living with me and Lyndon because we were distracting him, and Terrence was on a Rastafari road, and I was just this crazy guy. I don't know what they thought of me anyway. It was just England and mid. What's in there? I almost said Ruben. Lyndon used to call me Fratiano, because he was, before he became Rasta, he was into this mafioso or whatever, so I don't know, Godfather, whatever, and he says, yeah, Fratiano. And he used to be calling me Jimmy the Weasel. He says, Jimmy the Weasel, Jimmy the Weasel. What's happening, Jimmy the Weasel? You're a mafia, you're a music mafia. He said, Fratiano, he used to call me, you know. And so the brothers would come by and visit them, and I used to listen in on them, and it was a real cool time still. And then all of a sudden in the afternoons, you know, it's like everything is cool, right? Then all of a sudden you just hear Java, Java. You're the boy and the cheese must go between. You're the boy and the cheese must go between. A danger, a danger. Will you be mine? There was a sound system right underneath where we lived. You know, they used to, it's, man, I have to describe to you. Well, there was a flat underneath us, a little garden going out there. Next to us was another flat little garden out there. This Jamaican middle-aged man who used to grow his tomato. And he'd be talking about his tomato to his lady. I'd say, yeah, man, I grow my tomato, whatever. It was one of those people come to England a long time ago. You know, gentleman England. Like how you see Linton Kwesi Johnson with the hat and everything. That was the kind of man he was, you know what I'm saying? Retired gentleman growing his tomatoes and vegetables, and he'd be talking to the other neighbor about his tomatoes and pumpkins. And right next door you had these people who would be practicing their sound system. And Brixton was like that. You know, we're talking about Brixton, his sound system, people used to rehearse the sound system all the while, everywhere. And there was a Rasta man in the yard who was always fixing his car, and he'd be down there under the car all the time, and his music was Charlie Chaplin all day long. It was pure Charlie Chaplin playing, and you had to Lieutenant Stitchy, Brigadier Jerry, and those type of artists. You know, you'd hear them all around because that's who the people listening to. And then obviously from England you had oh man, what are the Cockney translation? What the Cockney translation? Oh, I forget his name, but I met up with his children much later. You know, he was killed by the police, and the police claimed that he stabbed himself. You know, England's dread, man. England's fucked up. Yeah. So smiley culture. Smiley culture. And then there was another one who was faster than Smiley culture. What name? I can't remember his name again. I will remember it. I will post it when I remember it. But anyway, so walking around London and seeing this big Rastaman with the dreadlocks, and you know, and it's summertime, so they have the little vests, and man, it was quite a thing, you know. So I'm living there and I'm taking in the sounds, and then before Terence was taken away by Benji got Terence to start selling herb for him at the front line, you know. So first we'd be looking for money for herb and everything, but now we had herb because Terence was selling herb. So he'd go to the front line and what a blood clot. He'd go to the front line and go sit on the front line, right? And so because Terence was on the front line, we'd follow him to the front line. You know, when I wasn't working, then I'd go to the front line and sit with him. And the front line was a Railton Road. Okay? You have Atlantic Road. Atlantic Road goes on further, and then coming closer to where we are, you would have Railton Road. Okay? And that place is now built up. There's a children's park, but it's dormant now. It's fucked up. I've got it on video somewhere. But it used to be like a square space, pretty large. I'd say 50 by 50, or maybe 25 by 25 meters, 30 by 30 meters, and benches on one side and benches on the other side. And then it was just pure black man, bare black man just sitting down there. You had the youths come in there, you had the Rastaman come in there, you had all manners of black man sitting there. And for me, that was my school, my first school into blackness, because all these, some of them were Rasta, some were into Egyptology, you know, some were into different whatever, you know, and I'd be listening to them, man.